So here we move on to the third round of Swiss. This is myself again on the right playing Andromeda, and Taurian on the left playing Weyland. Again, another matchup that we had from January 2014. Not a fantastic matchup, given that I've lost 3 games now. Taurian is a very good player. In fact, the level of competition this month at Manaleak was absolutely fantastic, and probably goes to make me feel a little bit better as to how badly I did overall. Because I'm 3-1 down at this stage. I'm not feeling particularly confident of making anywhere close to the top 4. I've already mulliganed my Andy hand, though my second is looking much better. Taurian has kept his initial Weyland hand. I'll be perfectly blunt with you. If you haven't already picked it up from the initial videos you've seen, this was not my finest hour as a tournament. I've made some very questionable plays. Even I can look back on it and see that there were some suboptimal plays going on in this tournament for myself, and I was punished very harshly for them. I think I've been a little bit unlucky, as is often the case in any sort of tournament setting, but in this one particularly I didn't have the rub of the green, and along with that, even when I did perhaps have the rub of the green, I didn't do anything productive with it. So anyway, Taurian starts off with a green level clearance, first click, giving him lots and lots of lovely Weyland transaction money. And obviously the draw. Excuse me. And he will ice up HQ. For his final click, he will beanstalk royalties. So plenty of money, but R&D is wide open, which seems to have been a common theme actually from my runner games thus far this tournament. HQ seems to have been secured and R&D less so. So first click I'll play Desperado, which is kind of the dream. Second click I will run on R&D and see nothing. I've got the spare Desperado in hand, so I'm not losing anything by using the turn to have a look at R&D. So that's one of the main reasons why I wasn't too worried about it. 2 clicks left. It's a question of, do I just kind of gather up some cash, or do I just begin to playing the cards I need? So I'll easy mark, and take the 6 credits. So, well, not a bad start again. I've got the Desperado I need to make runs profitable at the very least. Obviously, Taurian is somewhat short on ice. I'd be surprised if he wasn't anyway, having not iced up R&D, and that's going to be his probably first priority, to try and secure the centrals. He's actually going to, so yeah, there we go, he's going to install Res and use Jackson Howard. Again, going hunting for that ice, I suspect. Now again, Jackson Howard really is the great leveller of the corporation, has been discussed on multiple occasions, enables corporations to do exactly that, make up for bad starts, potentially ditch the things they need. He's actually going to protect as Jackson Howard, so that's a more important resource to him than anything else at the moment, which is telling. First click, I'm going to play a Plascrete down, I'm going to run R&D and steal geothermal fracking, so that's fantastic. Obviously get the Desperado credit. I'm going to go again, because it'd be stupid not to. And see nothing. I think that might have been a hedge fund there. So looking good, feeling good. Desperado down, Plascrete down, and I've already taken 2 points worth of agendas. Putting the pressure on R&D already, and seeing the initial agenda is fantastic. He does have the iced up Jackson Howard, but overall feeling pretty good, feeling happy. Again, Taurian almost always plays an aggressive tag and bag deck, as I've mentioned in my January tournaments, and so it's just a case of being cautious, not doing anything too foolish, trying to keep in a strong economic position at the same time as putting the pressure on the central servers, and just trying to ensure that he doesn't get the tag and bag that he needs. And again, all things being said, he's a very good player, so this isn't exactly the matchup I would have dreamed of, but as I said, to be fair, anyone in that tournament would have been absolute disaster for me, because my decks did not do well, I didn't do well, and it is not a tournament to remember, much less immortalise in YouTube form. I've already let myself in for a hard time by uploading January's tournaments where I run last click headlong into a snare with 2 cards in hand. I've now been demoted from Desperado Dave, as my nickname was affectionately known as, to Snare Dave, somewhat less affectionately. So I'm now in a position of having a much less cool alliteration-based nickname, and now one of shame and ignominy. So that's fantastic. So yay for YouTube, and yay for the 500 people who saw me do stupid things and continue to see me do stupid things. Anyway, I'll stop butchering now. So he ices up R&D, plays the power shutdown for 1, getting rid of plays power shutdown for 3, getting rid of my fairy. That's one of the reasons why I played fairy the turn prior. I saw the power shutdown on top of R&D, and I wanted to protect both my Desperado and my Plascrete, so I played the fairy last click to avoid losing either of them. Losing a fairy, not the end of the world, but losing a Desperado or Plascrete, big deal. So I've played a Mr. Lee there, as you can see, and I'm using him to draw up. But yeah, I just thought I'd explain what's going on there. So Mr. Lee, again, a great resource for criminals to be able to get the tools you need as quickly as possible. Looks like I've drawn into a fairy, possibly a corroder there. Weyland usually very flush with barriers, sorry. So a barrier breaker is an important card to see early on. Power Shutdown is a new card for Taurian though, so at this point I'm cautious because it's not a card he's played before that I'm aware of, and it's one that does great work in this game, it has to be said. Not one I was particularly pleased to see on a couple of occasions. I certainly don't have any power shutdown protection now. Another good reason to play a fairy. I don't think I probably wasn't aggressive enough at in this stage of the game. I probably could have done with trying to make him res the ice that he has there. He doesn't have any agendas scored, so archers aren't on. He has a lot of money, so anything he reses will do damage to me, but the key pieces of ice that do damage I'm not likely to be seeing there. So I probably could have done with just putting a little bit of pressure on and seeing what was in front of those servers, particularly obviously HQ and R&D. So he's going to continue to protect the Jackson until he obviously deems fit to put another asset or an agenda in there. Most likely looking to score out. This is obviously telegraphing to me that he probably has agendas in hand. And this is one of the real problems with preparing a remote to score into, is that you're kind of saying to the runner, yeah, please don't run my hand yet, I'm not quite ready for it. So it's a difficult one. He could be discarding agendas quite easily there with a Jackson Howard on the board. It certainly looks to me like there's a good chance here that he has been agenda flooded. I've drawn up there with Mr. Lee again and seen, I think, a Data Sucker and a Dirty Laundry, both cards I would love to keep, as often is the problem with Mr. Lee. I think I kept the Dirty Laundry for the time being for the money. Oh no, sorry, I kept the Data Sucker. So I'll play the Data Sucker, second click. Third click, I'm going to Dirty Laundry Archives. So he has in fact just discarded stuff. He's discarded the Sea Source, discarded a Snare. Those are the two face down cards. So either he already has the Sea Source in hand, so he might have two, and he discarded one, or he has perhaps given up hope of the flatline. And this is why all my Arena decks now run 3 Plascretes. It's just for occasions like this, and they do crop up. They are common. Looks like I've got a sure gamble in hand there, so I'm looking to retain credits to be able to use that first click next turn probably. But again, not really putting the pressure on there, it has to be said. Leaving a lot of ice unraised, not doing what I should be doing, and draining him of his money where I can. Should be playing more aggressively here. And it's not often you'll hear me say that. So he's putting back in the power shutdown, the snare, and a hedge fund with Jackson Howard. And again, obviously the power shutdown's a real concern. Data suckers are incredibly vulnerable to it. At the very least they do protect corroders, but the data suckers in and of themselves do good work, particularly when this deck runs a Mimic and a Yogg as well, as most Andromeda decks do tend to these days. That may change. as time goes on. I suspect it probably will. I, for one, am quickly going off having them as breakers along with data suckers. I think it's a little bit too finicky and a little bit too fiddly, however efficient it may be. I'm definitely going back to basics after this tournament, before our store championships on the 8th of May. I'm going to re-look at all my decks and build something I feel more comfortable with personally, rather than something I know perhaps is the most efficient deck, if that makes sense. I'm going to try and get something unique for me that will work. I think that's one of the reasons why I was more successful last month than this month. The Weyland deck that I've been playing just isn't for me. I can't quite get used to the rhythm and tempos of the deck, which is significant. So first click I'm going to draw with Mr. Lee. Excuse me. Seeing an R&D interface, but I'm going to play the short gamble. So decent amount of money, but not putting the pressure on here. And obviously he's got a double advance card now. Most likely a Project Atlas, potentially geothermal fracking. Could even be a posted bounty, which would cause me real problems. As long as I don't drop below the cards I need, anyway, it should be okay. So I'm drawing up aggressively here. I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for, to be truthful with you. It looks like I've got the cards in hand I need to get aggressive and do the things I need to. So I'm going to play the R&D interface, last click, which, again, I have to say, not ideal. Not really what you want to do. You want to play it first click, and before they put additional ice over R&D. But I do figure that's what he's likely to do. So he overscores the Project Atlas. So it's now got 2 counters to go and fetch what he needs on it. So he can now go and fetch. Obviously he's got power shutdowns in the deck. He's certainly got the Scorched Earth in the deck. I have to be very careful around snares, which I also know he has. It's just about being careful. Being cautious and not going crazy. He's on 10 credits, which isn't, it's quite a decent amount. So I'm going to play the Corroder down. I haven't got many cards in hand here, so this is a problem. I'm not expecting him to sacrifice the Atlas. So he plays a Chimera, or reses a Chimera, and puts it in as a code gate, I believe. So I have to bounce off that. But again, I could have been really pressuring his his centrals here. I could have been doing that over and over again. A tactic he uses very well in our next game, and makes me want to cry. But I should have been putting a lot more pressure here on his centrals, particularly on HQ, which I've left completely alone the whole game. Doesn't look like he has much in the way of agendas in hand at the moment, but obviously I'm not to know that. And pressure's important. I don't know what I'm drawing up for here. Maybe a special order, possibly the Yogg I'm looking for. Discarding the compromised employee, which I put in because I was expecting to see a lot of MBN at the tournament, which is true, I did, but I still never really found the occasion to use it effectively. I have to say, though, the compromised employee with a Chimera probably would have been a good play. I could have kept resing and kept making money off him resing the Chimera, which would have been very useful. Again, the things you see when you watch it back rather than in the heat of the moment at a tournament. So first click our short gamble and take some lovely monies. Still very much a partial rig. I've only got the code gate, the barrier breaker up. So there we go. Second click, I'm going to special order and looking for whatever it is. It's still not going to be enough to get through R&D because you can just res it as a sentry. But I'll play the code gate breaker, the Yogg. That'll be third click. I think I've got a sentry in hand, so in worst case scenario I can get through once, but you don't really want to use a fairy to break a Chimera. Not a very efficient way of playing the game. Got an account siphon there as well, which could be another viable option. I'm going to draw last click, keeping my hand size up. Very important you keep your 4 cards. Just again, particularly with 2 overscored Atlas. So he scores out the hostile takeover, giving me a bad pub, and he takes 7 credits. or 5 net gain if you prefer. So it's 3 points to 2. Still very evenly placed, but he's got the 2 Atlas tokens. That's a real issue. Mr. Lee first click. And I see 2 cards I'm not really that enthusiastic about. Not a lot of money at the moment. I'm only on 3 credits and a bad pub. Well, the bad pub's nice, but not going to do a huge amount of work here at this stage. So I'll play the ferry, second click. Third click we're going to run R&D and see a Grim. So I'm glad I put the ferry down first, otherwise that would have been unfortunate. Got the money to break it, so that's fine. Helps to get another bad pub for the Grim being raised. Another great piece of ice to have on a central server, though. It's expensive to run through repeatedly, and I'll just go through that. Make him res the Chimera, even though I know I'm going to bounce. I might as well make him pay for it. It's not going to do me any harm. He obviously puts that in as a sentry. So he has soaked up my ferry there, which is a real problem, and still very vulnerable to power shutdowns here. I don't want to lose my corroder, even though I haven't seen any barrier breakers yet. So he's ditched the Scorched, which is interesting, so I ran archives there just to see what he had discarded. Have a quick look to see what else is there. So the one Scorch has gone in. That either again indicates that he has 2 in hand and doesn't need a third, or that he's just given up on the Scorched Earth. Presumably he's given up, because otherwise he would keep it in hand and you keep the Atlas token spare for a special occasion, for when I'm stupid, which is a frequent occurrence, particularly in this tournament. So Mr. Lee first click. That's a C2 card you want kind of deal, I think, there, so I have to put the Sure Gamble to the bottom, which is the last thing you want to do. Second click, Mr. Lee again, see the special order and the Katie Jones. I'll keep the KT. So now I've got a problem with Sentry Breakers. So although I've got the Mimic in hand, it isn't going to do me a fat lot of good, really, at this stage. So I'm going to play KT, use KT. The Mimic isn't the ideal solution to Grim. It really kind of want Ninja, which I think I have a one of in this deck, or Fem. Obviously Fem it and bypass it for 1. Again, not ideal, not exactly what you want to do, but not terrible. But it is a long-term problem. And obviously, again, it has to be said that Grim onto Chimera is a great ice placement and a great play, and really solidifies R&D. But, you know, look, he's got 6 pieces of ice unresed, and although I know what one of them is a Chimera, that's not great work on my part. And now his archers are turned on because he has the hostile takeover scored. I need to have at least 3 data suckers and a mimic on the board to be able to keep myself safe from it. Problems, real problems here. I'm drawing up aggressively with Mr. Lee. I've certainly got my value out of that, but I'm not doing a huge amount with it. I'm struggling on economy, and even with 2 bad pub, I can't seem to make him work. Got the account siphon there. Don't want to use it against 2 pieces of unresed ice for good reason, particularly with no money on the board to break it. So I'm going to run archives, rather than just clicking for credits, and then put 3 on KT, final click. So not too bad, you know. Again, archive runs are going to be profitable for me at this stage. Getting data suckers and getting my Desperado credits is nice, very tasty. It looks like he's got at least 2 agendas there in hand. He has got the Seesaw still there, keeping his hand very secretive from the camera. Great suspicion. So he is going to play that Seesaw. I've got no means of beating the trace, so he trashes my Katie Jones. Not really what I wanted to see there. And he installs into the remote. So that's a very good play. It's a 3 unresed dice remote. One of them's bound to be an archer. In fact, I'm almost certain that one of them was. I don't have the money to break through that kind of level of remote, and I certainly don't have the means to break through the archer as it stands. I need to have got a mimic in hand. I can play it, but I'm not going to have the money to break through and score that agenda. So I do play the mimic. No, I don't. I run on archives. Do it again, second click, run on archives. Run on archives again. And though I, kind of wish I hadn't done it, I did it anyway at this point because I might as well play the mimic. I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't already shown my hand. Silly old me. Again, I was in a bit of a mind dungeon. So he scores the false lead, which is painful as well. Snares now become a real problem, if they weren't already. So I have to be very careful of R&D digs. Don't want to dig too deep. The R&D interface could very well work against me here, because he can go and fetch what he needs. So the first thing I'm going to do is run through an R&D. So I'm going to pay 2 data suckers and a bad pub to break the Grim, which is quite nice and economical. He's not going to res the Chimera, which is sensible because I can break it for 1 credit. And see a Project Atlas. Score it, so I'm back up to 4 points now. And get a credit and a data sucker back. So it's now an economical position to be able to run through. I've got enough data suckers, so I'm going to go again. So 2 data suckers and a bad pub. Run through, break, access 2, so I know that's an ice wall. And look and see what's the third one. I think it might have been another power shutdown there. So R&D is now open. It has to be said, I have the money to be able to go through with the bad pub and punish him for it. Do I have the time though? That's the question. He's got a very secure remote server. I'm going to inside job HQ, make him work for it. So he's not going to res. Again, probably not the best play. Probably the better play was to run HQ and then inside job if I needed to. A little bit wild and free, a little bit blind. Probably would have been better off saving it for the remote at the very least. So I don't think that was a very good play. But I did want to know if he had agendas in hand, and it is a very good way of showing it. If he raises both pieces of ice, it's a clear indication that he is very worried about what he has in hand there. As it is, he lets me through. Oh, and I see a geothermal fracking, so that was a great pull, taking me up to 6 points. But again, probably a little bit fast and free. I then draw up with Mr. Lee, making sure I keep my hand size up. And again, with an over squad Atlas, Scorched is always on, always on. You have to be very careful of it. 6 points though, in a good place, in a happy place. He's only on 4. It's all looking good at the moment. I don't know how many of the agendas he has left in hand, but he's in a bit of a precarious position, and really he has to deal with the data sucker here, and I think he knows it. It's the data sucker that's causing him the aggravation and the problems. And speaking of which, he will go and use a Project Atlas counter to search for a power shutdown to deal with said data sucker. So a far more efficient way than just clearing virus counters. So he will play first click the power shutdown and mill 1. Data sucker goes bye bye. That's the kind of point where you wish you had a fairy out. And that's a real problem for me, because that was a data sucker with 6 odd tokens on, and was enabling me to get in everywhere and anywhere. And certainly, I've only got to score 1 more point. 1 more agenda point and I've won the game, so it was a good play by Taurian. It was definitely the card that was the problem, and now suddenly Mimic doesn't get me through Grim, it won't get me through an Archer. Yogg is probably going to be fine, but the Grim is an issue. Even though I have a full breaker sweep, I cannot get through the Grim. This is another reason why, again, I'm kind of feeling a little bit more like data suckers are becoming less of a viable option. They are still great cards, I'm never going to argue that, but in a tournament setting what you want most is reliability. You want options and you want to be able to get what you need as quickly as you possibly can, and data suckers I find often slow the process down, and it's one of those cards that you almost feel forced to mulligan for in the early game, or at least draw up aggressively for. And we saw a lot of big ice in this tournament, and a lot of, I mean, to be fair, the corporation wins were far in excess of the runner wins over the whole course of the tournament, and a lot of it was down to the big ice that corporations were running. There were a lot of archers, a lot of grims, a lot of toll booths, a lot of ice on Eli's, for instance, in the last round. A lot of ice that's difficult and painful to break through unless you have the right tool for the right job. And the Anarch Breaker Suite is great, but you need the data suckers to make it worthwhile. But the game's still very precariously balanced. Taurian knows I need to see 1 point, and he still needs to score the 3. He still has an Atlas counter, so he can go and fetch the hostile takeover for the game-winning agenda, but he still needs to score a 2-pointer somewhere along the line. And he's debating, I think, as to how secure that remote actually is. Again, I'm almost certain that one of them's an archer. Whether he can afford to res it is the question. So he's going to get rid of a piece of ice. I've no idea what it was. Didn't make him use it. And he's going to install over that one. Probably protecting against inside jobs. I suspect now that the middle piece of ice is probably the archer, and he wants it to hit. So he's putting a piece of ice over it, so the inside job doesn't get rid of it. It's probably just something like an ice wall, anything or everything. Cheaper the better, to ensure that inside job doesn't let me skip past an archer. So I've got what looks like a special order and a Katie there for Mr. Lee, or maybe sorry, another data sucker possibly. So I play the other data sucker and Dirty Laundry Archives. So a good way to finish the turn there, and see what he discards, which is always useful, and gain obviously the credit. So he's discarded the Snare and a Chimera. So the Chimera was what was on the innermost piece of ice on the remote, which again obviously I can break there without data sucker tokens, so pretty much useless. He's not going to res it for 2. So that's 2 snares, I think. No, I think it's sorry, he shuffled one back in, didn't it? So it's only 1 snare in archives. Probably still 2 left in R&D. 1 at the very minimum. So he is going to use the other Project Atlas token, fetch another power shutdown. He knows he cannot let data suckers sit on the board, and it's a problem because this was the way I could win. This is his way of solidifying R&D. It's a great play and a very good use of his Atlas tokens when flatline is pretty much off the table. I'm being careful around the flatline, but the power shutdowns give him another avenue of attack. So I've got 1 data sucker left in the deck. But it is costing me time. It's costing me time and it's costing me money. I see a Crypsis and an Account Siphon. Neither of those really do what I need at this stage. Account Siphon would be viable. I don't know what's on HQ. I haven't made him work to res it. So that's a real problem. Mr. Lee again. See the Fem, which I'll keep, though I don't actually have the money to use it at the moment. I do have a Katie Jones that I can use. Do I have the time to actually use and build up the Katie at this stage? I'm going to say probably not. So again, interesting, another snare there. So that's 2 snares now in archives. So I'm feeling a bit better about R&D digging, that's for sure. But can I actually manage it? I'm going to say probably not at this stage. I'm on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 credits, 2 bar pub. I think a good play here would be to fem the Grim and just keep running R&D, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, these are the kind of thing. Oh, I dropped the data sucker there again. I'm going to get rid of the KT. I don't think I've got time for it. And I've got the money to be able to install the fem and to go through that Grim. He's installed advanced. And that's a problem, because if that's a 3-pointer, that's the game. I don't know if his deck is running 3-pointers. I haven't seen any. I know that he doesn't normally run 3-pointers. So it's a real question as to whether I endeavour to go through that or not, or whether I look down and then try and lock down R&D and just see one more agenda point. We all kind of feel like this is the end game. I've made a big mistake there. I shouldn't have played the data sucker. Should have played the fem. Again, the kind of things you see when you look back at yourself and think, yeah, I've made massive errors there. So I'm going to run on archives twice. So it gives me what I need to be able to hit R&D the once. A bit of all or nothing gambit here. So I will pay to break the Grim. See if he wants to res the Chimera, which he doesn't. And don't see the agenda. Bit of a kicker, and he scores a cleaners, and that's the match. I didn't expect it to be. I wasn't expecting it to be a 3-pointer. I was expecting it to be another Atlas. I thought I had a bit more time than I did, and I felt a little bit unfortunate there. But alas, installing the fem wouldn't have made that much of a difference. I couldn't have got through that remote, really, I don't think, anyway. And so we moved on to the second game of the third round, and I'm now 4-1 down, boo!